You're listening to the All Things Data Podcast, the show that brings you insights and informed conversation around today's ever-advancing knowledge economy. In the spirit of Daniel Kahneman, Peter Diamandis, and Google Moonshots, All Things Data brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss how to utilize, harness, and deploy data science, data-driven strategies, and enable digital transformation. Your hosts are Dan Yarmalak, Dr. Manjeet Reghe, and Thomas Marlowe.
Hi, you're listening to the All Things Data Podcast. So this is a show, this is a podcast where we talk about data science, machine learning, AI, cloud, and all those things combined. My name is Manjeet Reghe, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dan Yarmaluk, who will also introduce our elite guest today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have our guest, Michael Peachey. Michael is the Vice President of User Experience at RingCentral, and he's got a really interesting background with user experience. He's an advocate, creator of products, executive producer, and internet technologist with 15 years of experience building and leading cross-functional design and engineering teams. Michael thrives at this gritty center or intersection of design and development, business and technology. It's a pleasure to have you on today, Michael.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You know, so as an IoT guy, you know, I talk a lot about industrial stuff, and we're coming to this point in the industry where things are emitting data and they're going places, right? And but as the value is not really being captured. Part of it is the integration and interoperability of systems, right? These complex systems, legacy heterogeneous systems. But I'm kind of, Michael, as someone in the field, you know what I mean, day to day, I'm starting to wonder about our common assumptions of dashboards, all the data for all the people all the time, you know, because they're drowning in data. It's starving for information, you know. Mm-hmm. And I see this element as not an expert at all, just aware of the subject and a professional in the field of user experience. So maybe you can define user experience for us.
Sure. So I think you've got it exactly right when you talk about the difference between data and information. So user experience, you know, for you as an IoT guy, you know all about the stack from the physical through the data and the network layer and all the way up to the application. There's a step that happens between the application and the human being, the wetware that interacts with that application. That boundary right in there is the user experience. So it used to be way back when people were building things that people used, tools, cotton gins, axes and hammers and airplanes and cars and things. Before it was tech, they were just machines. It was always about people learning to use machines. That was the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. When we first started building systems, computers, and the interfaces between computers and humans, we followed the same things. Somebody would build an interface and the human would learn how to use it. What happened starting about 20 years ago or so with the writing of Alan Cooper and a book called Inmates Are Leading the Asylum was this idea that maybe we should start with what the humans need and design the interfaces on the computer side to meet those needs. And that's evolved into the discipline of user experience, how people interact with those things.
It doesn't seem like such a radical thought, yet it really is in a way, right?
Well, like most amazing thoughts, and in hindsight, it seems kind of obvious.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because one of my first graduate courses in data science was data analytics and visualization. And Manjeet taught me a lot of different software programs and the art of storytelling and visualization. And there's probably a lot of empathy you have, Manjeet, for Michael's, reason for being, so to say, because you're in the trenches in a different way as well, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. And one of the things that often is not talked about when you talk about the role of a data scientist is one of the important aspects of data science is also to build data products. And those data products have to be utilized by a human at the end of the day. If you think about how software engineering has changed, right now we are engineering intelligent software, and all of that has to be consumed by peoples of different abilities and of different age groups as well. If you look at a modern car today, a smart car or even like a Tesla, um, it has, with every new iteration of a new car, you the I'm not sure whether usability um, um is taken into consideration with the fact that you might have, let's say, an older person who might not be as tech savvy, uh, so that same user uh, design has to cater to a diverse groups of people, right, Michael?
Absolutely. So I think when we talk about usability in general or user experience in general, it obscures the fact that users are very different. And you're pointing out, an older person who may be less familiar or comfortable with technology may need something different than the target audience that Tesla is designing for, and the product becomes difficult for them to use. As with all things, it's hard to be all things to all people.
So how do you find a middle ground? And how do you find a user experience that is uniform to all, or do you customize based on the person's ability?
I think that there are a couple things that are going on in there. One, you're touching on the philosophical or social governance piece of the job of the user experience designer, which is, in my mind, to think through those issues of inclusion.
Hmm.
How is the thing that I'm building working to help connect all people? Is
Hmm.
part of it. So when we think about the collaboration software that RingCentral designs and builds and markets to our customers, we as designers could design for something that does a very good job of hitting, what we might consider the sweet spot, which are all of the already advantaged users and knowledge workers that are out there collaborating. Or we can spend some time thinking about how do we bring a more diverse population into that circle of success. How can we be inclusive? What does it mean to design a meeting product that helps somebody who is perhaps um, less aggressive or less large in a meeting than other people? Can I design a meeting product that brings out the best of everybody that's participating rather than just the people who talk the most already in the real world? And we believe that if we do that, we're helping not just the individuals reach their full potential, but the leaders in the organizations that employ them become more competitive because they're getting the full value out of every single one of their team members.
Michael, can you talk a little bit about Ring Central platform so that people who are not familiar uh, might know a little bit, learn a little bit about the platform?
Sure, absolutely. So RingCentral is been around for a couple decades. We've been a public company for the last 10 or something like that. Bunch of revenue that's out there, and we build products that help connect knowledge workers and allow them to collaborate to get things done. So we have telephony systems that everybody would be familiar with. We've got video products that let you share your screen and see videos of other people that you're collaborating with, team messaging and instant messaging kinds of products. And they're all integrated together in this unified suite of collaboration tools that let you kind of switch around and decide how you want to do stuff, right? Like we're all on some of us are having a voice experience now, some of us are having a video experience all in real time, and we'll be able to jump onto a messaging experience when you guys are like, oh wait, I got one more question, clickety click.
Well, that's exactly what you're exactly right, Michael. That's exactly what we're doing. But it's segmented. Mm-hmm. So like just out of curiosity, because we're in this, the future of work and this experience you're saying in this new work environment. And as you mentioned something like, minimizing the person sucking the air out of the room. Sorry, I'm from the Detroit area. We just got to call it, what we call it. Like how do you design that technologically? What are you thinking about in the future? What are you going like, whoa, this is where it could get really interesting like that.
I think the really interesting piece is coming up, right? So in spring of 2020, everybody got sent home from work, or knowledge workers got sent home from work, frontline workers and baristas and airline mechanics and things, not so much, but we're talking about knowledge workers here, those who had the blessing to be able to take their job home and do it from their living room or their spare bedroom or their dining room table or wherever they were. That was a really interesting social experiment where everybody had to learn how to collaborate remotely. You had to get familiar with video meetings because you couldn't go to the conference room. And that was hard. And people learned, and we learned a lot of really interesting things there about how people stay connected, and we can talk about that. The next piece, when you talk about the future of work, is what happens when some, but not all of those people, go back into a centralized location, into an office or a satellite office, and some are remote. And that becomes the really interesting user experience challenge, because there, our overarching goal is how do we make sure that all of the participants in that ecosystem, those on site and those remote, are able to participate at their fullest. Yeah. That 5 people are at the conference room table and 5 are home. How do I make sure that the 5 at home can participate in the discussion as full-fledged people? And some really interesting things happen in there.
Yeah, what's interesting is you kind of have, I would imagine you have a taste for this, because we work in this with software engineers and they're introverts by nature, and you're trying at the same time some of the smartest people, and you have to be that translator and data communicator. Mm-hmm. One thing I've been wondering, it would be interesting, like these are my thoughts as a guy that has traveled a lot for work, right? And we were doing all those trade show circuits. And I got to say, Mike, some guy would be coming in from New York. I'm coming in from Minneapolis. Somebody's doing these other things. And you're getting there and you're like, oh my God, like I got here. My wife is angry. I'm not home. This is like a waste of time. I'm walking 5 miles. And we have all this beautiful virtual kind of worlds that we're creating. I mean, the industry, like, are you seeing that, like, are we going to have virtual trade shows? Like, we do need to see people, community connection. I get it. Right. But it was absurd, the amount of costs and travel that they would, I mean, holy smokes, give that in salary, not just so we need to communicate, we need to market, but I thought it was just going way over the top, what does the industry think?
As I look forward to that, there's absolutely a place for bringing together lots of people and ideas into one physical space, because you've got a huge efficiency in there. Like, you cannot do CES online. You need all of the vendors, you need all of the exciting new tech, you need all of the buyers, you need all of the fanboys and girls that are there to experience that. And there's an energy. That's not going to go away.
Right.
Oracle's big show, Apple's big show, those things aren't going to go away. But what does change are a lot of the other kinds of things that used to have to happen in person. And now that we've broken the seal on that, some of that's not going back. And I'll take one example out of not in a business context, but for anybody who's got kids, we all have got that parent-teacher meeting. That parent-teacher meeting costs me half a day of work every time it happens for each one of my middle schoolers, because I got to go drive over there and I got to go sit in a little tiny chair in the 3rd grade classroom and talk to the teacher for half an hour, because that was the only way that happened in 2019. I've done a bunch of parent-teacher conferences in the past year that have all been remote over a video chat. They take me half an hour. The teacher is a lot less stressed out from managing all of the parents. I'm a lot less stressed out. It's a lot more valuable. I don't think I'm going to drive to a parent-teacher meeting again in my life. There's no reason to.
Yeah, that you took the words out of my mouth, Michael. I mean, every time I'm cursing myself walking out of those things because they're like 60 seconds long of value. Mm-hmm. And like you said, that's no disrespect. That's the process and the flow. Like you said, handling the efficiency and comings and goings. Are people comfortable? Do they find us? I mean, all that insanity. Mm-hmm. And am I looking proper in front of my teacher? Not like I'm the bad parent. It's like, but if I didn't go, I found it completely disrespectful to my child and the teacher, quite frankly. But half a day, I feel the same way about doctor visits, right?
There you go.
Going in there and they're hanging out, and I work with other very highly educated people, doctors. They all are. So we all have issues of time.
I think there has been also there's also been a change in the culture, right? With this entire COVID thing, that in the past, I don't think you could request your middle school teacher to maybe have a Zoom call with you, but now it's kind of become acceptable.
Yeah. So we like to call those RingCentral calls, but
right.
The same thing is there. So now everybody's been trained on this new way to collaborate. So if we want to do an information exchange, that doesn't have to happen in person anymore, which frees up the time to use the in-person stuff for emotional and social connections. Mm-hmm. But again, using that school experience, one of my kids' schools, they do the online parent-teacher conference. What they've started doing are the socially distant, these kind of coffee talk things where the teacher, the administrator, they do it outdoors in a little park, and everybody sits, they bring their little folding chairs or their blanket, and they all sit apart. And it's more of a social communication kind of event that's worth doing. And it's at 5:00 at night, and it's a little easier. So you get both of those experiences. You can use the in-person for what it's good at, and you can use the remote for what it's good at. And I think net, it improves both the social and the information experience.
So with people, working extensively from home and remotely, we have seen Zoom doing really well. So with RingCentral, have you also seen something similar? Has the business been better since COVID?
I think the way to think about that is that the 2020, the year of COVID, probably accelerated 5 to 7 years the adoption of these technologies, because they were forced on us. Necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of learning a new way to do something. So this was a path that we were on. We've just compressed and accelerated that. What's again going to be interesting is what happens, in the coming months or year or whatever it takes to get to herd immunity and vaccinations or however it works. We don't go back to December 2019. We're going forward to December 2021. And like I said, that hybrid kind of space is going to be very interesting to see how industries, organizations, businesses, leaders, individuals thrive or struggle in that new space. And that's where RingCentral is really focused on, that connected culture. How do we help our customers create a connected culture within their organization that gives them an edge up on their competition because they're being more productive?
So, most companies have some kind of a messaging or a video conferencing system, whether it is Slack or WebEx or Zoom. Michael, can you talk a little bit about RingCentral's competitive advantage?
Sure. So I'd go further and say most organizations have got several of those. You've got Slack, you've got email, you've got SMS, you've got handing a paper note across the table to somebody in a meeting. You got lots of ways to do that messaging thing. And the hallmark of messaging is this idea of store and forward or time shifting, right? Like if you want to send me a message, you can do it when you're awake and I can get it later when I'm awake on the other side of the world, or when I get out of a meeting, or when I worry about reading it. Video and phone are real-time and high bandwidth kinds of collaborations, right? You and I need to be at the same, doing the same thing at the same time, whether it was planned or serendipitous. And again, organizations have got multiple versions of that. If you may have one preferred tool in your organization, but then you have a meeting with somebody outside your organization, you may end up using their preferred tool. So there's this heterogeneous mix. Where RingCentral comes into that environment is with the integration of the phone and the messaging and the meetings, and then particularly the integration of the message and the meetings. So this conversation we're having here is very high bandwidth in real time. It was preceded by a certain amount of store and forward messaging to coordinate schedules and get things set up and communicate bios back and forth. That time shifted store and forward piece was just part of the overall relationship that you and Daniel and Leela and I have that goes to this high bandwidth real-time experience, but then it's going to drop down again to a message experience, and then maybe it'll go back up to high bandwidth real-time. And that's where RingCentral excels, is bringing those message plus video experiences together.
It does, Michael. It is frustrating for me to have a million apps and communication mechanisms to me. Like, it's cool. What Slack does is cool, but when I'm getting a Slack message, I'm getting a WhatsApp message, I'm getting a text, I'm getting an iMessage, I'm getting an email, I'm getting a Gmail, and everybody has their own little ecosystems as to what they prefer and why. If I'm working with Chinese, obviously it was, WhatsApp and audio and their kind of culture. So it's getting to be, I feel, for me, I'll speak for myself, it's getting to be overwhelming. And that this experience of being able to be interoperable or like my user experience to be manageable, so it's not in silos, is kind of where I'm at as a user. I'm sure you think about that a lot.
Constantly. And I think that unfortunately, the proliferation of different apps that you use to collaborate is probably not going to go away. You're going to be using WeChat to communicate with your colleagues and friends in Asia. Yep. You're going to be using WhatsApp to communicate with the people that are in the EU. You're going to be using iMessage for the people that are here. Like, that's not going to change. And new ones are going to come in that, you want to chat with your kids these days. Like, they're not using WeChat or WhatsApp. I got to go off onto Discord to send them and meetings with my kids when they're not around. That's probably not going to go away. And people are going to have to compartmentalize the different tools they use for the different kinds of activities. You've been in tech for a long time. Even if somebody were to come in and put them all under one big roof, the next step would be for some smart entrepreneur to go find another way to do stuff that was better than that. And then everybody's going to move over there and the consistency's broken again. So from a user experience standpoint, we want to optimize the experiences that people use our stuff for while embracing that entire ecosystem.
And maybe it's interoperability so that it doesn't matter what app I'm on. I don't really know. I'm sure there's a series of rabbit holes we would go down under these worlds. It's just, it's a lot. And, I'm also coming of the age that, I'm muting the dings and the notifications because most of it is advertising, and trying to be present and do deep thinking, in this world that we're supposed to do that. But then I miss this stuff because I don't want a red dot and don't want dings because they're siloed because I didn't hear from that person, as you were saying, up and down. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think it's working and some empathy, for I don't know what to do, but it's that's kind of the bane of what's happening here, right? You don't let all your dings go on your phone. RingCentral's phones would be going bonkers,
Yeah, well, I think that the research on this is pretty clear and consistent. That the first thing that you need to do is turn off all the notifications, because if it really is a question of your house being on fire, somebody's going to figure out a way to tell you.
Yeah.
So, step one, turn off all your notifications. Step two is, and we talk about this a lot in user experience design, the difference between maker time and meeting time, and blocking off maker time, which is where you need to be in the zone to be thoughtful and strategic and follow your ideas to where they go, needs to be protected from all those notifications. And then, for me, it's mid-afternoon. Other people, it's different times, but I don't do anything useful between 2 and 4 p.m. My brain's just off. That's when I check in and try to get myself to inbox 0 and all those different apps to get rid of the red dot, because I can't do anything useful. So it's a perfect time for, me too kinds of messages to people and questions and things.
So are you thinking about in your next generation of products and services in the future, looking at, I don't know how to articulate it. I'm losing my thought, but we'll get back to that when I remember it. But I did have something that I wanted to mention, because I know you're very passionate about it, is this assumption that design and development talent are incompatible. And, can you double click on that a little bit? Because I know what you're saying, but I'd really like to hear it in your own words.
Well, I don't think that design and development are incompatible. I think there's a very easy stereotype that all developers are like Spock and they're super logical introverts that only care about logical thinking and half a step beyond robots, and designers are these extroverted, flamboyant, creative thinkers that couldn't line up 6 jars in a row by size and get it correct. I know a tremendous number of very creative developers who think through new and unique ways of solving problems that nobody else has thought through. And I know any number of designers who are incredibly methodical and process oriented in terms of how they solve a problem from beginning to end. I think that what, in my experience, brings the designers and the developers together is that focus on the user and that the experience of that user. And this is where we use our research capacity. So when we went and looked at connected cultures at RingCentral, we did a study of 4,000 people across the world, talked to them about their experiences in the post-COVID world and collaborating to uncover what they struggled with, what did they need, what was working, what was not working for them. And what we discovered is that people don't need more features in their products. What people really need is more social and emotional connection to give them some context for what they were doing. So when we teach social and emotional connection to our designers and our developers, when we show them videos of users talking about, I feel disconnected from my coworkers. I feel stressed because I've got the baby crying in one room and the boss yelling in the other room. Then when we put together these experiences or these proposals for experiences, everybody, the designer and the developer, is standing shoulder to shoulder saying, like, my goodness, like, we got to go solve that problem for Donna. What can I do to make sure that she has a good meeting experience with her baby crying? Like, I know, let's build some noise filtering software that uses machine learning to understand a baby's cry so I can filter it out of the meeting and allow her to look more professional and productive in front of her boss, despite the fact that the baby's crying in the other room. Now everybody's focused on that, like, I got to go solve this problem for that actual human being. That emotional connection drives it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And creating that I know in some of your readings, your writings, I read about creating a culture of accountability. And also, I think a lot of this is really empathy for the customer. Where are they?
100%.
And doing deep thinking as to what their mundane tasks are. And I guess for me, it's like user experience. How are you drawing the line? This might be a really dumb question, but like we're going and accelerating through digital transformation, right? We're just accelerating. And how much of it is, process versus what we would call a GUI? I mean, where do you put, where do you double click on and go, this is where it is? Where do you think's missing from the debate, Michael? Where are people off? Where are people just way off?
I think that and there are a lot of people who are in the debate that understand the role of the empathy, of the emotion, of the connection to the person whose problem you're solving. But there could be more of that. There can always be more of that. What can we do to understand the personal, the human challenges that somebody has that are different from the functional challenges they have? And when we align on that, humans naturally solve that problem. When little Timmy falls down the well, everybody goes, oh my goodness, little Timmy fell down the well. And a town can get super creative and motivated to go figure out how to get little Timmy out of the well. When somebody is sad or when they're crying or they're struggling with something, it's part of our human condition to go solve that problem. So if I, as a design leader, can create that empathy for the problem that we're solving, smart people go and solve that problem using whatever tools they've got. If those people happen to be a bunch of data scientists and computer science engineers and designers and product managers, they're going to go solve that problem with new software tools and applications. But the focus needs to be on, in my mind, what are those social and emotional jobs that somebody needs to get done? Right? Like if I ask a team, how can you make people sign into a meeting faster? I'll get a faster API that starts up the meeting. If I ask a team to go solve a problem of, Ellen is going to be sharing her big idea to her boss and a bunch of her boss's peers, and she's going to be nervous during that meeting, and she's going to struggle finding the screen share button, and that's going to distract her from doing a good job in the meeting. I'm going to get a solution that helps Ellen get into that meeting with less stress, which is going to make her present better, which is going to make her look better, which is going to help her get promoted, and she's going to take care of her family. That's a really good problem to solve.
Do you sense an emotional connection between that experience? I mean, obviously you do, right? There's strong emotion there. So that user experience and would translate to brand affinity, in some kind of algorithm, right? Or some kind of matrix that we're looking at is that Ellen did better. She felt better. Mm-hmm. She performed better. Yeah. Therefore, so every time I hit RingCentral's collaboration button, it's working,
So people choose products for what products do. People desire products for how products make them feel.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Manjeet, I know you wanted to ask something.
So is RingCentral a completely cloud-based offering, Michael, or is there like a on-premise footprint of that as well?
100% cloud. The core value proposition of RingCentral is that you can do all of this stuff, whether you're a global enterprise with tens of thousands of employees in different countries around the planet, or if you and me and Daniel decide to start a little software company, the three of us, and we just want to do the stuff we're good at and not worry about how to set up our phone and video system, it's all cloud-based. We go online, click on a link, download some software, click a couple buttons to configure it, and boom, we're up and running, looking 100% legit, and we don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about how RingCentral integrates with applications, your business applications?
Sure. So within our messaging product, for example, we've got integrations with I don't know what the current number is. I feel bad that I don't, but call it 100 plus other third-party products that can feed information in or get information out of our systems. So, similar to Slack or a bunch of other tools that are out there, the participants in that collaboration are not only just human beings, some of them are systems that are out there. So the integration with Jira, the integration with Workday, something like that is important in that piece as well.
Michael, in your opinion, user experience has changed in a number of ways, since 1980s to now, as software has developed, and now we have smart devices. What do you think is the next big thing in terms of user interactivity and usability and user experience? Do you think we'll have interaction in terms of having augmented reality, AR, VR kind of devices?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question, and what I've seen over time, and I've been doing human software interaction stuff from before it was called user experience. It was called industrial design, and when I started doing this, the things that are on the horizon now are going to feel commonplace tomorrow. When we talk about AR and VR and artificial intelligence, we're thinking in our minds forward. What we miss is the fact that we already have AR and VR and AI in the tools that we're doing. The virtual background behind you when you're in a meeting, that's augmented reality, right? I'm not really on a beach with a palm tree swaying in the wind behind me. That's virtual. It doesn't really exist. When my kids get on a FaceTime call with their aunt and he pushes the button that turns him into a talking dinosaur, like, he's not really a talking dinosaur, but we take that stuff for granted. Yesterday's AI is today's Echo Dot sitting in your kitchen doing the stuff you tell it to do. And I think that those things start to become seamless to us and move out of our perception, out of our reality. And that's the job of any of these interfaces between us and the matrix, the Borg, the system, whatever it is that we're interacting with out there. It starts to vanish, and we take it for granted. You don't see it anymore, but it's there all day long with how you interact with tech.
Mike, one of we're wrapping up a little bit here, but one of the things I want to ask, you're a professional in a bleeding edge industry, technology moving 1 million miles an hour. What kind of advice would you give people, professionals? They don't have a UX designer, don't have it. How do they learn more to kind of take your expertise, your experience, and kind of try to implement it or benefit from it? What would you tell them?
So a while back, when I first moved out to the West Coast, this has been in the mid 90s, and I got a job at a interactive agency. Moved out from New York, where I'd been doing financial services marketing, and this internet it looked like it was going to be a thing. Like, okay, I'm gonna bet on this internet thing. And I showed up to work, and I went to where my little cube was in this office. And, there was my laptop, there was my phone, and there was a piece of paper on the wall that somebody had written Nihito on, Nihito, in a Sharpie, just pinned to the wall. Okay, I don't know what that is. Maybe some guy named Dave Nihito used to have this cube or whatever. Yeah. So, I took it down, and later on that day, I had a meeting with my boss, the guy who hired me. And he asked me, he said, "Did you see the sign?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. What was that all about?" He says, "Nothing interesting happens in the office." And his point was that if I wanted to do a good job of building the product and doing the stuff that I was doing, I needed to not spend time in my cube. I needed to go out and spend time with customers and with users to develop that real human empathy for what the problems they were facing. And if I understood the challenges that they had, particularly the social and emotional challenges, I would go and solve those problems for them, which would make their life better and would also make the organization I was working for thrive, because organizations are supposed to go solve problems for people that give them money for solving those problems. So I would say the advice is go out there and be talking to people. Nothing interesting happens in the office. Nothing interesting happens in I guess it's all got to be in a video meeting these days, but get out there and really understand what people want on that emotional level, and you'll figure out how to solve it.
That's fantastic advice, because I've thought about it as well, interoperability, design, how do we capture value of data, see it. But at the end of the day, we were in ecosystem echo chambers, and I don't think it was pushing the needle forward in terms of creating better solutions, kind of capturing this Gartner hype curve of IoT. It's not there because we haven't had empathy for the customer and understood all the variables they're dealing with in a user experience. We really haven't, and that's the case. But
Michael, do you think user experience is not given as much importance in the data science conversation? In data science, typically there's a lot of attention given towards ML or AI algorithms, but not to the user experience, which I think is equally important, if not more.
Yeah, so I think that, asking the guy who runs user experience whether or not he thinks user experience is important is like asking the plumber if he thinks you need to replace your faucet. Like the answer is going to be yes. Right. But I think that what happens, let's go back to the stack, right? You've got everything that you use to build up to your application that's got a GUI, the graphic user interface on it. Then there's that gap to get out to the human being on the other side, that user experience piece. From where I stand next to the user, all of the stuff on the other side of that is there to help create the experience. So you need the machine learning, you need the AI, you need the deep programming, you need all of the APIs to do stuff that presumably gets a good experience for the user and should be seamless. So let's take my Nest thermostat. And Danny, you were talking about the beginning of this, right? It was really cold the other day and now it's really warm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Presumably you've got a Nest thermostat, and that Nest thermostat is smart enough to have figured out what the temperature is and is going to change it. But somebody also sat down and thought, you know what? Dan probably doesn't want to go over to his thermostat every time he leaves the house to turn down the heat. But he probably also doesn't want to be paying to heat an empty house. How can I use tech to solve that problem for Dan, called I don't want to worry about wasting energy and I don't want to worry about wasting money? How that happens with proximity sensors and this and that is magic on the back end. But your experience is, I feel good. I'm not contributing to global warming and I'm saving a few bucks. So the tech helps solve the user's problem. It's valuable because it solves a problem, not in and of itself.
I think what Majid's throwing down is he might want this class in the data science curriculum in earnest, is what he's saying, Mike. Yeah, because look, this is the bane of my existence about interoperability, APIs, legacy systems. How do you get these widgets, like complex industrial system? Who cares, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it has to hum. This orchestration has to work. And it's like someone has to care about the process, the flow, and just kind of think about it. And people pay a lot of money to talk about it, but somebody in the trenches has to kind of string it along. And it just requires that empathy. And I call it hard thinking, I call it like giving a shit, excuse my language, actually caring. I've had people ask me to write product literature for them, complex Fortune 500 companies asking me to communicate it. And I said, the only reason I can write mine is because I actually thought about it and I actually cared. I can't go write, I'm not going to mention the names, your company's, technical AI literature, as I learned from a data science student and just like to communicate it from Manjeet on the phone. Like, it's just, I don't know anything. So it's kind of weird.
you need the context. And, as you're figuring out, UX people like me tell stories as ways to communicate stuff. So I'll tell you a story about context that has to do with the tech piece there. Anecdotal, but just we'll motor through it. Guy's walking through the fields in France in the Middle Ages, and he comes upon a man who's there by a block of granite, sawing this piece of granite with a handmade saw. And he says to the man, "What are you doing?" The man says, "I labor out here in the sun all day, every day, 7 days a week, turning this big piece of granite into small pieces of granite. My life is awful." Man says, "Okay, well, that does sound difficult." And he continues along a little further. He comes upon another man kneeling in the field, sawing away at a piece of granite, and asks the man, "What are you doing?" The man says, "I'm building Notre Dame, the greatest cathedral in the world." It's the context and the empathy between the job and why you're doing the job that connects everybody to the user, to the problem that's being solved. And that context changes everything.
Well, Mike, I'm going to end it on that because you can't finish on a better note of wisdom because amen. But this whole mass communications in general would be better improved if we understood and have little empathy about context all across the ground for human beings. So I couldn't think of a better place to end unless Manjeet has a point, or you would, any other points that you would like to mention.
Manjeet?
No, I think this was great. We haven't had a guest on our podcast speaking about user experience, and this was great. I'm sure this will shed some light for our listeners on this topic. So thank you for your time, Michael.
My pleasure, and I would encourage everybody to go search for Glip, our free message and video application with unlimited messaging and video. You could, of course, scale into one of our paid products, but the free one is out there for everyone to use. So go get yourself some Glip.
I was an early RingCentral user. I was for the longest time. So I'm going to check it out after this fantastic conversation. I will check out Glip. And again, thank you for your time. I know we have pretty low-brow questions, in the worlds of user experience and cloud-based communication solutions for the future. But I'm sure a lot of us do. So we appreciate it.
Oh, terrific! Thank you for the chance to talk.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of All Things Data. If you enjoyed this show and want more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and others, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating or a review. Until next time.